The name of the story, Campfire Confessions. The first day of camp always arrived like a half-remembered dream. Loud, warm, a little chaotic, and laced with something that felt like magic if you squinted hard enough. Tori stood at the edge of the main dirt road that wound through Camp Bluebird, her clipboard balanced against one hip, watching the yellow school bus bounce through a cloud of dust. She shaded her eyes against the sun, already high and blazing despite the early hour, and listened as the bus brakes groaned and hissed. Within seconds, the doors folded open, and children burst out like soda, shaken too hard. Some had wide, excited eyes. Others looked down at the dirt with suspicion, hands gripping stuffed animals or duffel bags. Tori had seen every version of a first-time camper before. She could already tell which ones would beg to call home tonight. Behind the wave of kids came the slower-moving group, a few counselors jogging up, ready to organize chaos, and a handful of parents. One of them caught her eye immediately. He was tall, a bit out of place in the sea of backpacks and bug spray, holding his son's hand as if it were an anchor. A navy t-shirt, khaki shorts, soft brown eyes. He wasn't trying to stand out, but she noticed him anyway. Nate, the widowed father who had signed up for the full 2-week volunteer program. She remembered the note on his file. Wants to connect with son. No camping experience. Open to anything. Tori pulled her clipboard closer, flipped the page, and stepped forward into the crowd. 10 minutes later, she found Nate and his son Max sitting on a log bench near the welcome pavilion. Max had a blue baseball cap pulled down low, his backpack too large for his small frame. Nate was speaking softly to him, pointing toward the lake, which shimmered in the distance. "Hi," Tori said, her voice warm but practiced. "You must be Nate." He stood up, offering a polite smile. "That's me. And this is Max." Max didn't look up. He clutched the straps of his backpack tightly. "I'm Tori," she said, crouching to Max's level. "I run things around here, but mostly I just make sure everyone gets enough S-mores and remembers to wear sunscreen." That got a small smirk from Max barely. "You'll be in cabin 3, she added, now addressing Nate. "It's older, but close to the lake. We put most first-timers there. I'll walk you over." As they began walking, Tori glanced at Nate sideways. "You're braver than most parents," she said. 2 weeks in the woods with other people's children? Voluntarily?" He chuckled. "I figured if Max was nervous, maybe being here would help. Plus, I needed a change of scenery." "Fair," she replied, nodding. "Camp's good for that." They walked the rest of the way in silence, but it wasn't awkward. Just peaceful. The kind of silence that didn't require filling. Cabin 3 sat under the tallest pine tree on the property, which meant it was always 10 degrees cooler than everywhere else. The wood was faded, the windows slightly crooked, and the porch steps creaked with every footstep. "I've stayed in worse hotels," Nate said, looking around as he stepped inside. Tori smiled. "Don't look too closely. The floorboards have secrets." Max had already dropped his backpack on the top bunk and was sitting cross-legged, looking out the window. "I'll give you a few minutes to get settled," Tori said. "Orientation starts in half an hour. Don't forget your name tags." As she turned to leave, Nate's voice stopped her. "Thanks, by the way, for being kind." She looked back at him. "It's day 1. I haven't had time to be mean yet." He grinned. "I'll take it." After showing Nate and Max to their cabin, Tori made her way toward the main lodge. The air was thick with the scent of pine and campfire smoke from the previous night's welcome bonfire. She passed clusters of counselors gathered around picnic tables, planning their activities, their faces bright with the energy of the new season. "Morning, Tori," called Sarah, a bubbly counselor with a cascade of curly hair. "New volunteer looks like a keeper." Tori smiled, but kept walking. "Don't let him charm you," Mark teased, stepping out from behind the lodge's wooden post. "He's got that calm widower dad thing going on." She rolled her eyes. "He's different. Quiet but solid." Sarah bounced over, clapping her hands. "I can't wait to see the archery disaster waiting to happen." Tori laughed. "Oh, you mean when Jonah shoots the juice boxes? That's happening tomorrow." Mark raised an eyebrow. "You sure you want to spoil the surprise?" As the camp's energy hummed around her, Tori felt a strange mixture of excitement and exhaustion. Running a summer camp was never easy. It was a constant balancing act between managing expectations, soothing homesick kids, and keeping the whole thing afloat. But today, she was especially aware of Nate's presence, like a steady anchor in the swirling storm of voices and laughter. That evening, as twilight draped its soft purple veil over the camp, the counselors gathered the kids around the fire pit near the lake. Nate stood back at first, watching Max and the other children, but soon a small group of kids approached him, curious and eager. Tori watched from a distance, a soft smile on her lips. He knelt down, pulling a small paperback from his backpack, a collection of classic fairy tales. In a clear, gentle voice, he began reading. The children's eyes widened as they listened, captivated by the stories of faraway places and magical creatures. For the first time all day, Tori saw a side of Nate that wasn't just the volunteer or the widower. He was a storyteller, a calm presence, a man who could hold their attention without raising his voice. And maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to let down her guard. The next morning arrived with the usual cacophony, campfire smoke lingering in the air, sneakers pounding on gravel paths, and a chorus of excited voices blending with birdsong. Tori was already on her feet before dawn, clipboard in hand, double-checking the day's schedule. She thrived on order, but was intimately familiar with how quickly it unraveled. Mid-morning brought the first true test. Jonah, a sprightly 8-year-old with boundless energy and zero aim, had been assigned to the archery class. Tori was supervising nearby when she heard a sudden thwack, and then a burst of giggles. Rushing over, she found Nate crouched beside Jonah, who looked sheepish but unharmed. The arrow had missed the target, and instead struck a precarious stack of juice boxes, sending a cascade of purple and orange liquids spilling across the grass. "Looks like the archery field just got a little more colorful," Nate quipped, his calm tone making even the kids chuckle. Tori sighed, biting back a smile. Add it to the incident report. Nearby, a group of campers giggled and pointed, and Jonah's cheeks flushed. Nate put a gentle hand on Jonah's shoulder. Everyone's allowed a few misses. Even the best archers started with a few arrows in the wrong direction. The boy's smile returned, and Tori watched the moment with quiet appreciation. The sun had just climbed high enough to cast sharp shadows through the pine branches, but the camp was already buzzing with activity. Laughter and shouts bounced between the trees, a vibrant soundtrack to the first full day of the summer. Tori stood near the archery range, clipboard clutched tightly as she scanned the scene. She watched the kids line up, bows in hand, faces a mix of concentration and sheer delight. For many of them, this was their first time holding a bow, a new adventure filled with both excitement and nerves. Her eyes caught Jonah immediately, small, with wild curls and an enthusiasm that seemed to spill over like sunshine. He gripped his bow tightly, determination etched across his face. Then, thwack, an arrow went astray. Tori's heart jumped, but before she could move, she heard laughter. Looking up, she saw Nate kneeling beside Jonah, calm as a lake at dawn. The arrow had missed the target completely and instead struck a towering stack of juice boxes that someone had carelessly balanced nearby. The juice boxes exploded like a burst of confetti, purple grape and orange mango splattering across the grass and the kids nearby. Jonah's face turned red, embarrassment flooding his bright eyes. He looked ready to shrink into the earth. But Nate's voice, gentle and steady, cut through the chaos. "Looks like the archery field just got a little more colorful," he said with a small grin, meeting Jonah's eyes without judgment. Tori felt the tension ease in her chest as some of the nearby children giggled, and Jonah's smile hesitantly returned. She walked over, trying to keep her expression neutral, but couldn't help the small smile that tugged at her lips. "Add it to the incident report," she said dryly, glancing at Nate, who gave her a mock salute. Jonah, still clutching his bow, looked up at Nate with wide, hopeful eyes. "Do you think I'll ever be good at this?" he asked quietly. Nate placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "Every expert was once a beginner. You're just getting started. The important part is to keep trying." The boy nodded, renewed determination shining through his shy smile. Tori watched the exchange, her mind drifting briefly. She remembered her own childhood summers, how scary new things had seemed, how often she had wanted to run away, but had stayed because of moments like this, the patience of someone who believed in you. Her gaze softened as she glanced at Nate. Here was a man, carrying his own hidden grief, quietly becoming the steady presence these kids needed. For a heartbeat, the noise around her dimmed, replaced by a quiet gratitude. In the chaos of juice-soaked grass and missed arrows, she found a moment of calm. Later that afternoon, as the sun began its slow descent and painted the sky in soft hues of gold and rose, Tori found herself wandering toward the lake. The camp's bustle had settled into a gentle hum, children chasing fireflies and counselors preparing for the evening program. She carried a cup of lukewarm coffee, its bitterness matching her mood. Today had been exhausting, managing skinned knees, broken bows, and a chorus of homesick whispers. But beneath it all was a quieter, more persistent weariness. As she neared the water's edge, she spotted Nate seated on a weathered bench, a small group of children gathered around him. In his hands was a worn paperback book, the pages dog-eared and softened from use. The kids listened intently as Nate read aloud, his voice calm, rhythmic, weaving tales of faraway lands and brave heroes. Tori stopped a few feet away, watching without interrupting. There was something tender in the way Nate's eyes softened when he looked at the children, a patience born not only of kindness but of his own experience with loss and healing. For a moment, the tough exterior she usually wore felt unnecessary. She let herself be a quiet observer, a witness to the warmth spreading from this man she barely knew but was slowly coming to understand. Her thoughts drifted to the past, to the mistakes she'd made when love was simpler but less safe, to the heartaches she'd buried deep beneath rules and responsibilities. Could she allow herself to trust again? To hope? The book closed softly, and Nate's gaze lifted. Their eyes met briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. "Care to join us?" he asked, voice low. Tori hesitated, then nodded, settling onto the grass beside them. For the first time in a long while, she felt a fragile thread of something new, possibility. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky painted in deep shades of indigo sprinkled with distant stars. A soft breeze stirred the surface of the lake, sending tiny ripples that glittered in the moonlight. Tori and Nate sat side by side on the old wooden dock, their legs dangling just above the water, toes occasionally skimming the cool surface. The camp was quiet now, the children tucked into their cabins, the counselors finishing up their nightly rounds. A single lantern hung from a nearby post, casting a warm glow that softened the edges of the night. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Nate broke the silence, his voice low and thoughtful. "You ever think about how strange it is how people find each other?" Tori looked at him, surprised by the vulnerability beneath his calm tone. "What do you mean?" He smiled faintly. "I mean, in all the noise and chaos, the randomness of life, sometimes two people's paths just cross." She nodded slowly, watching the stars shimmer above them. "I've learned to expect the unexpected," she said. "But I'm also careful. I don't let people in easily." He turned to face her, eyes reflecting the lantern's light. "Why not?" Tori took a deep breath, the memories pressing against her chest. "I've been burnt. More than once. So I made a rule. No dating anyone I work with. No exceptions." Nate's gaze softened, not judgmental, but understanding. "Sounds like a rule born from pain." She looked away toward the dark tree line. "Maybe, but sometimes rules keep us safe." He was quiet for a moment, then reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "Maybe some rules are meant to be broken," he whispered. Her heart thudded painfully, wildly, a mixture of fear and longing swirling inside. But she didn't pull away. Not yet. The sky had darkened unnaturally fast, thick clouds rolling in like an ominous tide. The wind stirred the pine needles, sending them skittering across the ground with a restless urgency. Camp Bluebird, usually alive with laughter and song, fell into an uneasy hush. Tori stood near the main lodge, eyes scanning the horizon as the first distant rumbles of thunder echoed through the valley. "Storm's coming faster than we thought," Mark warned, his voice edged with concern. Tori nodded, her jaw tight. "We need to get the kids inside. Now." The counselors scrambled, herding the campers like sheep as the first fat drops of rain began to fall. Nate, nearby, helped a group of younger kids dash toward shelter, his calm presence a beacon in the mounting chaos. Later, inside a small cabin near the lake, Tori and Nate found themselves stranded together by a fallen tree blocking the path back to the lodge. The storm roared outside, rain hammering against the windows, lightning illuminating the cramped space in jagged bursts. Neither spoke at first, the tension thick but unspoken. Finally, Nate broke the silence. "Storms have a way of forcing us to face things, don't they?" Tori glanced at him, shadows flickering across her face. "Sometimes I wish they'd just pass quietly." He smiled softly. Quiet doesn't always mean peace. Their eyes met, and for the first time, the space between them felt charged, full of things unsaid and feelings too fragile to name. A crack of thunder shook the cabin, and Tori reached out instinctively, her hand brushing Nate's. Neither pulled away. The cabin was small and sparsely furnished, with rough wooden walls and a single flickering lantern casting dancing shadows. Outside, the storm raged with relentless fury. Wind howled, rain lashed at the windows, and thunder rolled like distant artillery. Inside, the air was thick with unspoken words. Tori sat on a creaky wooden chair, her hands wrapped tightly around a mug of tea Nate had made from the camp's emergency supplies. Nate leaned against the wall, eyes fixed on the flickering flames of the small fireplace. "I didn't expect to spend the night here," he said quietly. "Neither did I," Tori admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, the only sound was the storm and their steady breathing. Then Nate's gaze found hers. "I've been scared," he confessed. "Not just of storms, but of being alone, of failing Max, of moving on." Tori's heart ached at his honesty. "I understand," she said softly. "Loss changes everything. It makes you build walls you don't want anyone to climb." He nodded slowly. "But sometimes those walls keep out the wrong things and the right ones, too." She looked away, fighting the rush of emotions swelling inside her. "But rules," she began. Nate took a careful step forward. "Rules can protect us, but they can also trap us." Their eyes met again, and in that moment, the storm outside seemed to soften, as if echoing the fragile calm growing between them. Tori took a deep breath and let her guard slip just a little. Maybe some storms are meant to break us open." Nate reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Or to bring us back to life." Their hands found each other, fingers entwining, a silent promise in the midst of chaos. The morning after the storm, the camp buzzed with renewed energy. Children ran between the trees, carrying leaves and flowers, their faces glowing with excitement. The younger group had organized a surprise performance, a wedding sketch that at first seemed like just a joke, but soon became something much more. Everyone gathered in the clearing by the lake, where small benches and chairs were arranged like for a real celebration. The kids, dressed in old hats, flower crowns, and bits of fabric, took on the roles of the officiant, groom, bride, witnesses, and guests. They improvised, joyful, sincere, without any pretense. Tori and Nate stood nearby, initially a little embarrassed, but quickly smiling at the honesty and innocence of the moment. Max, Nate's son, was one of the witnesses and looked endlessly happy. At the climax, the groom suddenly turned to the bride and said, "Even if the storms come and the skies grow dark, we promise to stand together, no matter what." Tori glanced at Nate. Their eyes met, and there was something more than friendship between them. She felt her heart quicken, warm, tender, and real. Nate smiled, slipping his hand into his pocket, as if for the first time feeling that this camp, and this woman, might become his home. Later that evening, after the children had settled into their cabins, and the camp grew still under the blanket of night, Tori found herself sitting alone on the porch of the main lodge. The warm glow of lanterns flickered softly, and the gentle chirping of crickets filled the air. Her mind replayed the morning's wedding sketch, the innocence of the children, their simple yet powerful words. It struck a chord deep inside her, awakening feelings she thought she had long buried. Nate approached quietly, settling down on the bench beside her without a word. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. Finally, Nate spoke, his voice low and sincere. "Today felt different, didn't it?" Tori nodded, her breath catching slightly. "It did. The kids, they remind me of what really matters." He looked at her, eyes reflecting the starlight. "I'm beginning to think that maybe I'm ready for something new. Not just for Max, but for me." Tori turned to face him, searching his expression. "I've been holding on to rules and fears for so long. Maybe it's time to let some of them go." Their hands found each other's in the dim light, a quiet promise that neither words nor time could break. The next few days at Camp Bluebird were a blend of laughter, small challenges, and quiet moments. The storm had passed, but its ripple effects lingered. In a way, the children clung closer to each other. In a way, the camp felt a little more intimate, a little more real. Tori found herself seeking Nate's company more often, their conversations growing longer and more personal. He shared stories of Max's childhood, the struggles and joys of being a single father. She opened up about her past, the mistakes, the losses, and the fears that shaped her walls. One afternoon, while helping the younger campers build a raft for the lake, their hands brushed as they reached for the same piece of wood. The simple touch sent a spark through both of them, silent but undeniable. Later, as the sun set behind the trees, Nate found Tori sitting alone on a fallen log, gazing at the fiery horizon. "You're quiet today," he said softly, sitting beside her. "I'm just thinking," she replied, "about how life moves forward, even when we don't want it to." He nodded. Sometimes the hardest part is learning to move with it. They sat together as the sky deepened to twilight, the promise of something new hanging between them like the fading light. One late afternoon, after the day's activities wound down, Tori and Nate found themselves alone in the camp's small library, a cozy room lined with shelves of worn books, where the fading light filtered through dusty windows. Nate picked up a book on archery, flipping through the pages. "You know," he began, "I never thought I'd be here, volunteering at a summer camp." Tori smiled. "Neither did I. Life has a way of surprising us." He looked at her seriously. "I came here hoping to reconnect with Max, but I think I'm finding something for myself, too." She met his gaze. "I understand that feeling. It's scary to risk being hurt again." Nate nodded. "Yeah, but maybe the risk is worth it." There was a softness in the air, a quiet understanding passing between them that words could barely capture. As the sun set, they closed the book and stepped outside together, the cool evening air wrapping around them like a promise. The campfire flickered softly, casting warm orange glows on the faces gathered around it. The children were dozing off or quietly whispering, wrapped in blankets, while the counselors exchanged tired smiles. Tori sat beside Nate, their shoulders barely touching, the night filled with a comfortable silence. "I never told anyone this," Nate began, his voice low and hesitant, "but losing Sarah changed everything. I felt like I lost not just my wife, but my future." Tori looked at him, her eyes gentle. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He shook his head. "It's part of my story now. But being here with Max and with you, I'm learning to believe and hope again." Her hand found his, fingers intertwining naturally. "Sometimes the past feels like a shadow," she said, "but maybe it's the light we're moving toward." Their eyes locked, and in that moment, the weight of fear lifted, replaced by something fragile and real. The last week of camp felt both fleeting and eternal. Days were filled with laughter, shared meals, and moments that would linger long after summer faded. Tori and Nate moved with a new rhythm, one shaped by trust, understanding, and quiet words spoken between them. One evening, after dinner, Nate invited Tori for a walk along the lake, where the water shimmered in the last rays of the sun. They stopped on a small pier, feeling their hearts beat in time with the gentle lapping of the waves. "You've become a home for me," Nate whispered, looking into her eyes. Tori smiled, feeling warmth fill her with every word. "And you've become a safe place for me," she replied. Their hands joined, and around them, it felt as if time itself stood still. The campfire's glow flickered softly as the last night of camp unfolded. Stars scattered across the sky like tiny lanterns, and the gentle hum of crickets filled the warm summer air. Tori and Nate found themselves alone by the lake again, the world around them quiet except for the soothing sound of water against the shore. Nate took a deep breath, his eyes searching hers with a mix of hope and vulnerability. "Tori," he began, voice steady but filled with feeling, "these past weeks, you've become more than just a camp director to me. You become someone I care about deeply, more than I thought I could after everything I've been through." Tori's heart raced, her own feelings rushing to the surface. She reached out, taking his hand in hers. "Nate, I've tried to keep my heart guarded for so long, but with you, I feel like I can be myself again, like I can trust again." He smiled, relief and joy shining through. "Then let's take this step together. No more hiding, no more rules. Just us." Tears welled in Tori's eyes, a mixture of happiness and hope. "Yes," she whispered, "just us." They embraced gently, the night wrapping them in its quiet magic, promising a new beginning. The last morning at Camp Bluebird was filled with bittersweet emotions. Children hugged tightly, promising to write letters and return next summer. Counselors exchanged knowing smiles, their faces touched by both joy and a hint of sadness. Tori and Nate moved through the camp together, savoring the familiar sights and sounds one last time. Max ran ahead, laughter ringing as he played with new friends. Nate watched him with a tender smile, then looked at Tori. "This place, it changed us," Nate said softly. "It did," Tori agreed. "And I think we changed each other, too." They stopped by the lake, the water calm and shimmering in the morning light. Nate took Tori's hand, squeezing it gently. "Whatever comes next, I want us to face it together." Tori nodded, her heart full. "Together," she echoed. As the camp bus pulled away, carrying Max and the children toward their homes, Tori and Nate stood side by side, ready to start their new chapter, one filled with hope, healing, and love. End of story. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it.